Hey everyone, Jordan here. I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Leader Seeds Podcast. This is where you can always find high impact and healthy leadership methods. Because we believe in pursuing your full potential, everything in your God-given calling, but never at the sacrifice of the most important things in your life. In today's episode, we'll be talking to John Davis. And John is an internationally known keynote speaker, a comedian, a fight director, a stuntman, a college professor, an artistic director, and a corporate action hero. You hear a lot about that in today's conversation. Now, he's also traveled extensively throughout the world, speaking to audiences of all ages and backgrounds in 28 countries for over 4,000 live performances. One of the cool things I read about John is that after the tragic events of September 11 in 2001, John dedicated a great amount of time bringing entertainment to the soldiers overseas. On 6 USO tours, John performed more than 100 shows and has taken his show to the most remote bases, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I invite you to listen into the entirety of today's podcast, as you'll hear how John helps people hack the fight or flight response we all experience when we approach fear. Take some notes when he covers his 5F system, and you'll get a chance also to see how you can continue to be connected to him and with us here at Leader Seeds. With that being said, I want to personally thank you for pushing that play button and checking out today's episode. Let's go ahead and listen in on the conversation. I'd like to start today with one question, John. First of all, thank you for being here. It's an honor to have you on Leader Seeds. And the question I like to start with, just to kind of break the ice and get some good conversation going, is if you had a favorite season in the year, like a favorite season, which one would you pick?
Absolutely summer. I grew up at a beach resort, and I have a Jeep with no doors and no top, and I like to go out on the beach and hang out in the absolutely summer. I'm a summer guy.
Nice.
And thank you for having me, by the way. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Oh, awesome. Right on. Well, I mean, knowing that you like summer and the fact that you have the resources for summer, a Jeep with no top, that's a summer.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. I love, it's funny. I'll tell you how much I love jeeping on the beach is I actually bought a special rack to carry fishing poles.
Uh-huh.
I don't fish, but to drive my Jeep on the beach, I had to have fishing poles.
Right. It's a necessity. It doesn't matter if we fish or not. It's, hey, we need that on the...
Right. Well, you have to have it to legally have your license to drive on the beach where I came from. So hey. I have a whole fishing setup, and it's all fake.
Outstanding. I think that if you're listening in, I'd say pick up on that. You might not think, but knowing John and the conversation we had lately, you're going to see how equipped he is, how intentional he is with situations in the present moment. And that might be something far left field by just hearing about fishing poles and a Jeep and summer. But trust me, it'll all connect as you're listening on the conversation today. John, tell me a little bit about, I'd love for you to share with everyone here on Leader Seeds, a little bit about how this started, how this corporate action hero started. Give us a little bit of history and background.
Okay, well, it's a long story, but I'll make it short just so we can bring it in time today. So, when I was a kid, I really wanted to be Robin Hood. I used to be the kid with the stick in his hand, pretending to sword fight in the woods and the thousands of acres of woods behind my house. And that manifested into me wanting to be a stuntman and a fight director for stage and screen. I ended up meeting two of the top fight directors in the country, guys named Brad Waller and Payson Burt, who saw a lot of talent in me as an actor and combatant, and offered me their training for free and really gave me a lot of encouragement. So then I got really into the idea of stuntman, fight director, started going for my black belt in Taekwondo. And at 22 years old, somebody invited me to his house to help him. Invited me is a funny word to say, to help him unload his van. Right. Right. Hey, I'd like to invite you out to the house. By the way, I've got a van full of 80-pound boxes of clay. Can you help me unload them? Sure.
Right.
So I get out there, and at this point, I'm very fit. I'm a very strong guy, lifting weights, going for martial arts, and the whole thing. And when he said that, to me, it was just another workout. I was really kind of excited to get some more workout in. And I climbed up in that van, and I picked up that first 80-pound box of clay. He had clay because he was a professional potter. And I turned to set that box of clay outside of the van, and when I turned to set it down, my spine broke in two, and I collapsed and was paralyzed.
Wow.
And they called me to the doctor, and the doctor said, Mr. Davis, you have a condition known as spina bifida occulta, to which I promptly said Gesundheit. And then he told me that what happened to me that day was I had 3 vertebrae that never formed properly at birth, and with the extra weight and the twisting action, I literally cracked my spine in half. And he told me that day, he says, you may never walk again, and even if you do walk, you will never have a physical career because your back can't do it. Your back is not capable of that career. So give up on being a stuntman, give up on being a fight director, give up on being a martial artist. So I'm lying there in that bed, and somebody comes in and hands me a book. And it sounds like a really cruel joke right now, but they gave me a book by Bruce Lee called The Tao of Jeet Kune Do. So they gave the martial artist who was just told he'd never do martial arts again a book by the greatest martial artist that ever lived about martial arts.
Wow.
So, sounds like a really cruel joke, right?
Right.
Well, as I read that book, I found his philosophy on present moment, staying very present, and his philosophy on mental flexibility. And the more I began really diving into the philosophy of that, I decided that I wasn't going to take the doctor's belief about my present moment, and I was going to take my own belief about my present moment. And what I decided was that he can't, if he's telling me what I'm going to be in my future, and I'm believing him, then I'm living his life and not my own. So I had to go, no, I am going to be a stuntman. And so that day, I started leveraging my present moments, and I started flexing my upper back muscles. And I slowly flexed them down my back until at day 24 or 25, I was able to actually flex my hips.
Oh.
And the doctors were like, holy smokes, how to do that?
Wow.
Within a year, I was up and I was walking, I was moving around, and in a year and 6 months, I gave myself a gift, and that gift was to go climb up a 3-story tower and jump off into a fall pad.
Hey, wait, did you say 3 months?
No, it was 3 months I was walking around, and a year and 6 months. Yeah. It took a year and 6 months. I jumped off a tower into a fall pad.
Wow!
And then I went on to do over 4,000 live comedy sword fighting stunt shows all over the world, including the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan. And then something happened during that whole process. I started really studying neurolinguistics and hypnosis and how the mind works in our achievements.
Okay.
And not only in personal achievement, but leadership as well.
Okay.
How do you guide others through that process?
Right.
And so I started having more fun off the stage than I was on the stage doing my show, because after the show I was sitting in the audience and helping people achieve their goals and helping people, get out of their own way and awaken their interaction there. And so I said, so now I need to figure out a way to help people achieve their goals, get out of their way, and limit their self doubt and limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
But I also really wanted to still do whips and nunchucks. So, those are cool and fun, right?
Absolutely.
So I created the Corporate Action Hero, where now what I do, and I've been doing this for more than a decade now, I travel all over the world, going into companies, teaching leaders how to lead people through adversity and change, and how to awaken their interaction here, get them to shorten learning curves, increase productivity, and reach achievements in half the time.
Wow. I tried to capture everything that you shared really quickly, but there's a few things that stood out to me, and I want to thank you, first of all, for sharing that so well, because I know there's a lot of probably pockets in there that we could go more in depth, and there's a few that I might have some questions in. But first of all, let me just get some clarity, if I can, with some points that you shared. Because first thing is, when I hear Corporate Action Hero, after hearing how you just shared, that's not just a nickname that you get as a childhood in the neighborhood playing with your buddies, right? There are some real life foundational elements of not just how it started, but how you're serving people today. your corporate
Right. Well,
action.
The word action means create motion, start momentum, or to do something.
Right.
And the word hero means a person who achieves extraordinary results in the service of others. And so I truly lived my life as an action hero, not a superhero. There's a difference. The superheroes, unlike action heroes are ordinary individuals who create super results. Superheroes are people who wear their underwear on the outside of their pants, who are irradiated by goo and have superpowers.
Maybe that's what I think. I was trying to be a superhero my whole life. I've been trying to.
Now, see now. Aren't you glad we're on Zoom now because we can't see where you're wearing your underwear, right?
Right. I can stop today. Thank you for the freedom. I can stop wearing the underwear on the outside. I can start. So if you're listening in here and you're watching in and you have your underwear on the outside, maybe it's the day for switching around and being an action hero, right? Thank you so much for the clarity in those distinctions.
No problem. And the reason I added corporate to it is because when I started looking at who is going through the most stress, the most anxiety, and the most change, it's in the business world.
Right.
It's in the corporate world. And so, and to be honest with you, I'm a keynote speaker. I can go speak to the guy who's not succeeding in life, but he doesn't have a budget.
Right.
And corporations do, right? So you go where the business is, right?
Right. And I think that's what really I really enjoyed about our last conversation last time we was talking story, is because you're definitely somebody to have a conversation with you, it just flows. It's really down to, like, one part that stood out when you were sharing that bit of history is like how you can be on the stage and you can teach and share and you can guide people through this process, but at the same time what you look forward to is being face to face with them, coaching them, getting some real results, being in the audience with them. And that's, that connects a lot of the times to being a participant of events, being there. I think I enjoy that too, and the instructor is there with you, walking you through your internal objections, because you can hear some good teaching at times. To be honest, we go to conventions and teachings or conferences, whatever, and we hear a lot of good framework. But in between that framework, there's a lot of personal objections or personal limitations that we need help navigating through to connect everything, right? Because we hear a lot of good stuff that give us some goosebumps. But at the end of the day, we got to get the gears turning. How do we get the gears turning past the goosebumps? Hey, I'd like that little G thing that connected there. Anyway, but how do we get the gears turning, right? Past the goosebumps of a nice quote or like a nice thing that kind of inspired us, but something that gives us real action at the end of the day.
Well, you have to push go.
You got to push go.
I had to put another G in there for you. Right. All right. The thing is your present moment is filled with three things: thought, word, and deed. And your thought, words, and your deeds are what create your experience. And so if you're not pushing go and doing the deed, it's because you're in fear of some kind. Something's limiting you from moving forward. And this is all part of my 5F system, because my 5F system is really designed about hacking that fight or flight response so that you can take actions and move forward. That fear response that we all have is a primal response. And if you're not taking the action, if you're not pushing go, it's because you're afraid of something. And you need to address the fear first.
I thank you for touching on that, because I agree 100%. It is pushing go. It is taking action and getting things moving. But I'm sure you when you're talking to people, when you're helping people, when you're coaching them, as simple as it is, what is that? The first question that comes to mind, and I think you kind of touched on it already. What is it? What makes it so hard to take such a simple thing and push go? What makes it so hard? And I think you touched it. You opened a little bit about that fight or flight mechanism and that fear that stands in the way. I think a lot of us are used to hearing the word fear, but maybe explain in your experience how real and how would you explain fear, and why is it such a major thing that we try to figure out? We think we know about it, but yet it's still there, and to overcome it, very few do it. So how do you help people with the 5S kind of get through that?
I'm so glad you asked it in that way, and I'm so glad you asked it in exactly the way you did, because overcoming fear is an interesting thing. Well, the question you asked is, how do I define fear? Was one of the questions you asked, and so let me answer that I ask my audiences that question all over the world. I say, give me a definition of fear, and the room goes silent, and then somebody in the back of the room will go, false evidence appearing real. right? And I'm like, yeah, right, bullshit. Pardon my French.
Right.
I hope I can say that on your podcast.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, if I jump in really quickly, isn't it funny how we respond with how we're taught to respond? So there isn't much thinking in our response. We're just taught as a response to kind of kick back, regurgitate what we've been taught. But really, if we think about it, maybe help guide us through. Like, if we really think about fear and that whole false evidence appearing real, what is it?
Well, let me really get into it, because what I say to my audience at that point is that I don't believe that answer. And the reason I don't believe that answer is because when you break fear down scientifically, fear is an emotional reaction to some future event that may or may not happen, with you focused on a negative outcome. And so fear, when you break it down even further, is simply negatively focused uncertainty.
Oh.
Right? So that's all fear really is negatively focused uncertainty. The interesting thing is we have a primal response, and the reason we have a primal response was because way back in history, if we didn't have that primal response, a saber-toothed tiger would eat us, right? And that's, that was right. We still have the same responses, right?
Right.
The interesting thing is the fear mechanism comes with one key element that shows us we're in fear. When most people are in fear, they don't feel like they can get a deep breath. They don't feel like they can breathe.
Oh,
and
true.
Here's the biggest secret. It's not because they can't breathe. It's because their body is conserving air. Because the first thing you do when you get afraid is you go, you gasp for air. Well, the reason you have that primal response is because you're trying to fill your lungs up so that you can run further and faster. So it's not that you can't breathe, it's that you have a lot of air in you. And the interesting thing about that is you go to Broadway and you talk to actors, or in the films as well. If they're in front of a couple thousand people and they forget their lines, they are literally trained to exhale, relax all their muscles, and all their lines rush right back into their head, because it turns off the primal response and turns the cognitive thinking brain back on. So if you find yourself in a place where you feel tense and tight, like you can't breathe, or you're like, oh my God, worried about something, exhale, relax, and get back into your brain. And that's really the main simple key to breaking a fear response. Now, the first of my 5 F's is fearlessness, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to set your fears aside, because your fears are not rooted in your present moment. And your present moment is the only place you can do thought, word, and deed. Does that make sense?
Say that one more time, because I think for those taking notes, I want to make sure I'm catching everything as everyone else listening in. So say that with number 1. The first F is
fearlessness. Fearlessness. Okay. And you can't move forward in anything without setting your fears aside, because your present moment is the only place you can have thought, word, and deed. And since fear is not rooted in your present moment, it's a future uncertainty that you have a negative focus about, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's not. You should just set it aside. And the way you set it aside is exhale,
right,
and get back into your brain, right? Now, when I was on the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan, I had the opportunity to talk to soldiers in the field, and I said, sometimes you get sent out on a mission, and you might be looking at an opportunity where they're going to get shot at or bombs shot at you, or how can you do that? And they said the same thing. They exhale first. They go, all right, we're doing this, right?
Right.
And then they said something interesting. They said, but it's easier for us because of the fact that we have an objective. We have something to focus on. Fearlessly focus. That's the second F.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So once you get something to focus on, now here's the interesting thing. The subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. Focus. What are you focused on? Okay. When you focus on something positive, you'll see positive things in your life. When you focus on something negative, you'll see negative things in your life.
Yes.
Your subconscious mind has 2 jobs. The first job is to store conscious present moment memories as an underlying belief system. Your second thing your subconscious mind does is show you what you're focused on so that you can achieve it. And I can prove it to you. Have you ever bought a car?
Yes.
Okay, is there a certain kind of car you liked before you went to the store to buy it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you chose what kind of car you wanted. So once you made that decision and before you bought it, did you start seeing that kind of car?
Yeah, like everywhere. Wait,
everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because your conscious mind chose something. Your subconscious mind started showing you the pathway to get it. And that's the way the subconscious mind works, right?
Right.
Now the key is, now you've got thought and word, That's those two things.
Right.
When you add deed to it, you get the car. Right? So that's literally how it works. So once you start stacking these deeds that are in alignment with thought, word, and deed with the goal,
Right.
stacking your subconscious mind behind you,
Right.
you're now creating from that space rather than a negative space. You know, I'll give you an example, and I'll tell you my Egypt story now, if that's cool with you.
Yes, please.
All right. So, in the year 2000, I went to Egypt, and I had a great time in Egypt. Everywhere I went, I was treated like an absolute prince. Now, I went to Egypt, and I was going there just excited to see everything and do everything and meet everybody and have every experience I could possibly have. And I was in the streets, and you know, we went to the Giza Plateau, and I went over and I hung out with the guys who rented camels. And you know, so it was like everywhere I went, I was treated like an absolute prince. And finally, I went all the way out to Mount Sinai, which is like we flew over to Sharm el Sheikh and 3-hour drive into the desert to Mount Sinai. And we get out there, and I get into the hotel. And I walk in. I walk up to the counter, and the manager of the hotel was there. I said, "Gosh, I'm really loving your country. I'm really giving this positive experience, and really expecting a positive experience." And he's like, "Really, right?" And that night dinner came. Oh, wait, hang on. So he said, "Well, what do you like so far?" I said, "Well, I love the food." He said, "What's your favorite?" I said, "My favorite right now is koshery and fool."
Oh.
He's like, he gives me this look. He says, "What?" He says, "That's the peasant food." That's what he said to me.
Wow,
right?
yeah.
I said, "No." I said, "But I love it. I love it. Koshery." So that night, we're at this hotel. Now, hotel is a very grand way of saying building with shacks around it.
Right.
And we're all of us in the shacks are supposed to come to the main hut for our dinner.
Okay.
And we all come to the main hut, and no menus come to the table. Kitchen doors come out, and all the same meal comes out to every table.
Okay.
And it was a beautiful steak dinner.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful steak dinner.
Uh-huh.
And we're sitting there at our table, and I'm watching all these other tables get all their food, and then the kitchen kicks open, and a giant bowl of koshery and full sandwiches hit my table, right? And we eat this koshery and full sandwich, and then our steak dinners came, right?
Oh, okay.
So
right.
So we're like, well, this guy is like loving us, right?
Uh-huh.
So 1 o'clock in the morning, I start climbing Mount Sinai, and I start climbing, and about an hour and a half into the climb, and in the darkness, I hear, John. Now I'm going to tell you, when you're climbing the side of Mount Sinai and you hear your name called in the darkness, that's a trippy experience. John.
It's a little mix of emotions, right?
Yeah. It was like, whoa, okay, this is weird.
Right.
And you're in Egypt and nobody speaks your language and somebody's calling you by name and it's like, what the heck?
Did I hear that? I didn't hear that. I did something wrong in my hearing.
And all of a sudden, the manager of the hotel runs up to me and he hands me his coat because he thought I was going to be cold when I got to the top.
Huh.
Okay, this is how I was treated the entire time I was in Egypt, right?
Yeah.
This is how I was treated. The next day, I came down from the top of Mount Sinai, and I went to St. Catherine's Monastery, which is right there at the base. St. Catherine's Monastery is an old Byzantine monastery. All the priests in there with the long Greek beards and the whole, the incense burning and beautiful art on the wall and the whole bit. And and I'm like, wow, this is so cool. But suddenly I hear this voice, and this voice says, and I don't mean like a psychic voice. I mean another person. I didn't mean God. I meant a God.
Right.
He says, hey, are you American? I said, yeah, I'm American. He said, me too. He says, have you been having problems since you've been here? And I said, no. I said, everybody's been treating me like a prince. He says, everywhere I go, people want to fight me. And 5 minutes later, I wanted to kick the guy's ass. Right?
Wow. Okay.
Because he was a jerk, right?
Right.
So, but he expected to have problems. He put the thought process into it, and the thought process of negativity gets shown in your experience because your subconscious mind will show you what you're focused on. Right? I was focused on having a great time and meeting wonderful people, and I met wonderful people and had a great time. Right. He was having people wanting to fight him and having all kinds of problems because that's what he expected because he had a problem with going to a Muslim country.
Wow.
Right? That was really his biggest issue. The thing is, when you get focused, we talk about fearlessness. I was in a country that there were definitely things that could have happened in that country to me.
Right.
I wasn't focused on those things happening to me.
Right. Right.
I was focusing on having a good time and respecting everybody I met.
Right.
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 So we got fearlessly focused. Now I'm focused on a positive outcome. That's what I had.
Wow.
But the interesting part is the third of the 5 F's is faith.
Faith.
Belief. What do you believe in your experience? You know, my son. Go ahead.
Can I share real quick something that stood out to me on that second one with focus? Because that's such a profound story. And I want to thank you for sharing that with us here and kind of taking us, if you're listening to the podcast, guys, and you're still listening right now, I bet that you did the same thing that I did when John was kind of walking us through it. I was in Egypt. Like, I don't know about you, but as you were sharing and walking it through, that was my first trip to Egypt. Like, you painted the picture so clearly that it took me back there and allowed me to kind of experience it as you're walking us through it. And if you're listening to the podcast, like I say, when John was walking us through it, here's something that I want to share that stood out to me, John, really, really quickly. It's like, though you had those experiences and that focus, and the other gentleman had a different experience and a different focus, both of you had the opportunity to focus on what you did or focus on what the other person did. Like, you could have focused on everything that other gentleman focused on, and you would have had his experience. And he, at the same time, had every opportunity to focus on what you did also. So you were in the same place at the same time with the same people, with a different experience, you know, and it's because of focus. So if we thought focus was at a level 3 or a level 10, whatever you thought before, John just pushed it up about 10, 20 different notches, because when you really understand the power of focusing on the present moment. Once again, the last thing I want to share too is how what I caught when you were sharing is, when you focus on the present moment, you can eliminate fear, right? Because you said fear is when we're on the negatively focused on uncertainty, right? So when we're negatively focused on the uncertainty of something coming that isn't here today, that's not in the present moment. So if I'm focusing on the present moment, I don't even give fear a chance.
Right. Exactly right.
Wow.
Because fear being not rooted in your present moment, that's why they call it the I am moment, not the I will be moment. Right?
That's a note taker, guys. Write that down.
Right.
It's the I am moment, not the I will be moment. Write that down.
Well,
awesome.
and it's really interesting because in Judaic religions, I am is the name of God, right? And whatever you ask in God's name is granted, right?
Right.
So I am having a bad time is asking in God's name, right?
Right.
If you want to look at it from a religious perspective.
Sure.
Now, in a cognitive creation without religion involved, I am is your present moment statement. It's the only moment that you have. So you are creating that in your experience. So for me, when I look at my present moment experience, I went to Egypt and I was like, I am going to have a great time meeting great people, right?
Right.
But a lot of people have another issue with that same I am moment, right?
Right.
Because when I talk about their I am moment, I talk about you have to take certain words out of your vocabulary right away if you want to have a good time.
Right.
And if you really want to achieve great things in your life. And the first words I tell them to take out of their vocabulary is wanting, needing, hoping, and trying. Because
Right.
I am wanting will give you a real good want. I am needing will give you a real good need. I am hoping will give you a real good hope. And I am trying will give you a real good try. Right? If you think about that, I am, what am I doing after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you can change your perspective to I am creating, I am enjoying, I am loving, I am meeting amazing people, I am. And when I'm going to throw a little biblical thing in here. Jesus says, whatever you ask in God's name is granted. But Moses, when he climbed that mountain, Moses said that God's name was I am.
Right.
Not I will be or I was.
Right.
So
Not
now,
I will be,
wanna,
not I will be or I was. Sometimes focus helps by eliminating things that isn't real, right? So eliminating distractions, right? I know for me, if I want to focus on something, I got to eliminate distractions. So I will be or I was, we can see that as a distraction to focus on what I am. And then one thing that you shared too on it, I'm a man of faith, and it's like when you look at it, it's when you see I am was enough. It didn't need nothing to be added to it. I am like I said, wanting, or I am needing. It didn't need anything to be added to it. I am is fulfilled. It's enough for that present moment. You have everything you need for that moment.
Right. And as a person of faith, whatever you ask in God's name is granted, quote unquote. That's what the book says.
Right.
Well, whatever you put after I am is what you're asking for.
Right.
And I am having a bad time in Egypt because people don't like me. Is what that guy was. He was saying, I am not trusting these people because they're not of my faith.
Right.
Those are very different things.
Very different.
I have met amazing people of all faiths.
Right.
And it has less to do with the faith and more about the way you treat them.
The way you treat them.
And the way you live with people.
Right.
For me, I consider myself a spiritual person.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised with a very devout Catholic upbringing.
Mm.
My mother has her master's degree in liturgy. She was head of liturgical doctrine of her church. It's so much so that when the priest wanted to do a sermon, he had to pass it by my mom.
Wow. Cool.
Okay, that's it. To make sure it matched the church doctrine.
Right.
And my mom would give him the sign of the cross and say, "Go ahead," and he'd go. Right.
Wow. Cool.
But my mom was truly lived her spirituality rather than her religion, because when we all turned 18, she told us, each one of us, that spirituality and religion is a choice, and we need to find our own pathway. And so I went off and I studied everything I possibly could, and I studied Islam and Sufism, and I went into the Baha'i faith, and I even studied Wicca and all the different, as many as I possibly could. Really got into Hinduism and looking at what they were thinking, and the whole Buddhist concepts as well. And it's really interesting because when you look at what you're creating in your experience, it's all the same stuff. But it's a matter of whether you can take that process that they're all talking about, right? They're all talking about the same thing,
Right.
And when I look at it from a Christian perspective, it's that God is love, right? Mm-hmm. Well, everything else that keeps you separate from it is fear. And so, when you're creating into your experience, you want to create from the process of fearlessness, right?
Right.
And so, going to Egypt for me was about going there and loving the country, and loving the people, and loving the journey, and loving the trip.
Okay.
And so I had all of that thrust back upon me at every level of my trip. I had no bad issues the entire time I was in Egypt.
Wow.
Right? And was treated like a prince the entire time. So we got fearlessly and focused. My focus on that trip was loving being there and loving enjoying and loving the country and loving the people.
Right.
And I got it back in space. Fearlessly focused with faith. I put complete faith in what I was doing.
Right.
I didn't allow my faith to get into negativity, because you can believe in negativity.
True.
You can believe it's going to be a bad experience. That's where your faith can be.
Right.
So I got to get fearlessly focused with faith.
Okay.
And that faith is creative. But the interesting thing, none of those three things are worth a darn without the next one.
Okay.
So it's fearlessly focused with faith and follow through. You have to actually take an action, right?
Right.
And this is where most people get afraid. They have these big goals they set, and they have these big dreams that they set, but until they take an action, it's just daydreaming. And because thought, word, and deed only happen in your present moment. They can't happen tomorrow. They can't happen yesterday. They can only happen now.
Right.
And so you've got to make sure all three are in place. The follow through is the key. Now, the interesting thing is if you look at water in motion, flowing down a hill. That water's flowing down a hill. It's full of life. It's full of oxygen. It is healthy, clean water because it's being filtered by the actual riverbed itself, right? That same water comes to the bottom and lands in a puddle, and it sits there and it draws stagnant, and things start growing in it, and bugs start living in it, and it becomes poisonous, right? Life is about motion. You've got to keep the motion moving. So you've got to constantly be looking for change. You've got to be constantly looking for a new direction and giving yourself a new direction. Because if you're not stepping out of your comfort zone into a new direction, then you're going to stagnate. The interesting thing is, everybody thinks stagnation means stillness. There is no stillness in our world. you're either going up or down.
Right.
And because think about this, that water stopped. It didn't stop and stay clean and perfect. It immediately started to stagnate.
Right. Where do you think the default is? If you're either going to move up or down, do you think the default is that people are moving more up, or is that the default is people are moving more down? Because I'm thinking, where do we have to put more intention towards? Right.
Well, well, intention is the key thing, because you have to really stay focused on moving forward. And if the second you don't, you will see your life stagnate. I know a lot of, I'm about to be 57 years old in a couple days. I'll be 57. Right?
Awesome. Happy early birthday. I'll be the first to wish you a happy birthday this year. So happy early birthday.
All right. Thank you. Well, what I find really interesting is that I know a lot of people who are my same age who aren't as young as I am. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I have a Jeep with jacked up tires, and I have like all kinds of cool things. I have a rack of swords in the other room. I got nunchucks. I got cool things. I got all around my house. My kid comes over and we shoot Nerf guns at each other.
Right.
We have a great 57 years old, right? But I know other people who can barely walk to the mailbox at 57 years old.
Right.
Right? They're stagnating, right? I'm constantly giving myself something new to strive for and go for, because life is motion. And if you're not in motion, then you're going the opposite direction.
Yeah. So it sounds like to me, and what I pick up on and what I kind of agree on is, I think it seems to me the default, what happens if we're non-intentional, if we live a life that's non-intentional, the default is that we will digress. Things will go backwards, right? It's a downhill that happens on default. I'm just like, I know John Maxwell says this, where he's like, everything worthwhile is uphill. So everything worthwhile it's an uphill thing. So we got to push through it. And then on top of that, you have fear. And I'm picturing, now, how would you say this in how you teach and how you coach people? Because I'm picturing fear being kind of in between each step of an F. Like if I get fearlessness, I might hit to another block, another objection of fear, and then I got to get to focus, and I get another. Am I picturing it right, or is it something that how you hack the fight or flight response, that can be done at every level, or is it a whole other thing with different levels? How would you teach that?
The 5 F's that I teach is part of the fight or flight response, because the reality of it is that the 5 F's I teach are not linear; they happen all the time. You can get fearless and get focused, and fearlessly focused with faith. Right. You can get fearlessly focused with faith, and then not follow through because you're afraid again.
Because you hit another kind of right there, right? But your response to it can be the same to overcome it. Is right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Cool.
But my friend Dan Thurman, he used to be the president of the National Speakers Association. He and I have been friends since he was 19 years old, and I used to make fun of him and get him really drunk. Anyway,
good little history hook. I love it.
There's a whole other story there I can tell you about it sometime. Well, we won't go into, because I don't want to be sued. Anyway, Dan is one of my great friends. I took Dan to Iraq and Afghanistan with me on 6 USO tours.
Awesome.
And so Dan's an amazing guy. And it's so interesting to look at Dan, because Dan's life is all about intentional motion, right? And his book is called Off Balance on Purpose. And it's all about throwing yourself out of balance so that you can create momentum towards something. You want to make sure that you're going out there and he demonstrates it by getting up on top of a 6-foot unicycle.
Right.
And then he throws himself off balance, and then he has to play catch up to catch himself to get back underneath the unicycle, right? But the idea is real, because we have to be constantly throwing ourselves out of balance.
Right.
Everything that I've ever achieved in my life came from being out of balance and putting myself into uncomfortable positions.
Wow.
But putting myself in uncomfortable positions, but having faith that I was going to come out the other side.
Right. And putting the 5 F's, right? Fearlessly focused. Go, because I was picking up on that. Fearlessly focused, faith.
With faith, and then follow through. Take an action. Right.
Look at that.
Follow through. Right.
We got real-time results right on this podcast, guys. If you just connect the F's on it, you got real-time results. I love it.
Right,
It's true.
Right. Well, here's the next one. This is the one that most people struggle with in this process. whenever you're going for something, and you've got real focus on where you're headed and what you want to do, and you're putting motion in that direction, a lot of times something's going to come up that's going to seem contrary to what you're trying to achieve. Right? It's going to come up and seem like it's a block. Right? Those are the moments you remain flexible. Because if you're in your present moment, if you've chosen something, right, and your subconscious mind is showing you the pathway to get there, and your subconscious mind shows you a blockage, you have to realize that it's not something to stop you, it's something that needs to be addressed to get to your goal, because you're still focused on your goal.
Right.
And if you focus on the blockage blocking you, you're going to change the goal, and you're going to be blocked. Right.
Right.
Now, to give you an example, it's kind of hard to get a good one, but you could be setting a goal to have the greatest store in your hometown if you're a business owner. I want to have the greatest beach surplus store. I grew up in a beach resort, beach all the buckets and shovels and all the crap, right? And then next thing I know, 3 blocks over, the biggest store, the biggest conglomerate that sells that exact thing opens up, right? And I could be like, oh crap, and get this big fear, right? Or I can go, well, how can I leverage this into my success? So what do they have that I don't have? Well, what they have is a big corporate environment, So change your focus. Now we are the family-friendly store that sells beach supplies. We're the and you create a whole different. So you're shifting and focusing around the issues. And what's Bruce Lee used to talk about, be like water.
Right. Yeah.
You flow down the river. You come to a rock. You flow around it, through it, over it. But you're still going to the end result. And the only thing that stops you from getting past that rock is your conscious mind saying, "I'm done."
Right. And not be flexible.
Right. You've got to be flexible around everything. For me, I find that when I'm going for a goal and something comes up that seems so completely contrary to what I'm trying to achieve, it came up for a couple of reasons. One, it had to be either taken care of and removed, or it had to be incorporated, or I had to recognize that I could disregard that now. Those are the 3 basic things that happen.
Right.
I have never come in, ever since I've discovered this, I have never come to a situation that has completely stopped me.
Wow.
Because, and let me just say this, after my back injury, I discovered that I could do anything. Now I've been to 30 countries around the world. I did over 4,000 live comedy sword fighting stunt shows. I was a college professor at Oberlin College. Gosh, what else I do? I became a corporate speaker, and I do that all over the world. I'm a fight director. I teach for the International Order of the Sword and Pen, a big organization that does fight choreography. I've worked with movie stars. I've done everything I've ever wanted to do.
That's some pretty cool stuff. That's some pretty cool gigs too.
Right. Only because of the fact that I knew I could, and I took my 5 F's and I lived it.
Right.
You can achieve anything in your life. You can achieve anything in your life. Fearlessly focused with faith, follow through with flexibility.
Fearlessly focused with faith, follow through with flexibility. Fearlessly focused with faith, follow through with flexibility.
Right.
Wow. Look at that, guys. I like to do this on a podcast once in a while because I love the engagement. We got a great community with Leader Seats Podcast that kind of participates. Even if you're listening in your car, wherever you're at, let's say that together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Fearlessly focus with faith and follow through with flexibility. Look at that, guys. We can remember that today. We can use that framework next time we're approaching something like fear. It's a way to kind of hack the fight or flight response. And this is something that you teach people. I mean, guys, too, like when you come to these events, these are thousands of people that you're speaking at, right?
Right. Oh yeah, easy.
Right. Easy. Right. So you're speaking to thousands of people that's working through real life problems, and you're guiding them through this. And I know right now you said you're doing this for quite some time, right? So I want to just put a good value on this kind of information that you're getting. Like, it's not just F's and it's fun and it's kind of like cool because it's cute because it's F's. This is real life overcoming fear on how you help people. Who's in the audience? Maybe give us an idea when you're speaking. What kind of people are in the audience and what things are they wrestling with?
One of the things that I find really interesting is I have all walks of life, and some people really feel like I'm speaking to them directly. And they'll come up to me after, and they'll pull me aside and say, "You were talking about me." Right? And because they think they're there, right? Now, I had a woman, one woman that I've worked with to really get her past her fears. And one of the things that was in working with her, she was agoraphobic. She would never leave her house. She was afraid to go outside. We started working with her and started changing her words and her thoughts about her present moment and getting her doing these 5 F's. It was, I guess it was just under 2 years after I started working with her. She took a solo trip to Africa and climbed the mountain and hung out with the gorillas that Jane Goodall used to hang out with. Right.
Wow.
This is a person who couldn't leave her house.
Wow.
Right.
And she's in the jungle with gorillas.
She's in the jungle with gorillas.
Wow.
Right. This is a person who, I mean, I'm not sure I would have done that. Right. Right. I have very little fear left, because when I look at my first one being fearlessness, I understand that fear is just an emotional reaction to something that's not happening right now. Because if it was happening right now, that your adrenaline would give you a whole different experience. You'd be in a fight response rather than a fear response.
Right. True.
Right?
Very true.
So fear is just an emotional reaction to an impending event that may or may not happen.
Wow.
Right? So why focus that way?
And it doesn't. And with, I mean, just like how you said, in your audiences, there's people from all aspects of life, and I think that's a thing with fear also. Like, it doesn't choose a certain special kind of person, or a certain age group, or a certain part of the world, a certain season of life. Like, everyone experiences fear. But the one thing that I think I'm passionate about, and I love that we're talking about this today, is because I think if you think about it, fear really interrupts people's momentum to serving at their full capacity. Like, serving at their full maximum capacity. Like, is that possible, do you think? I mean, some people might think that's not even possible, cause I mean, some people in real life might think, like, I'm just gonna play at this level. I've been trying when I was younger. Like, is it still possible for people to play at their full potential? I know where I lie on it. I love to hear how you kind of walk people through that process that's wrestling with that. Is it still possible to serve at my full capacity?
Well, let me start this answer this way. Doctors told me I would never, ever be able to do sword fighting again. And then they also told me that I would have to have pins inserted in my back to hold my spine together. I never let them put pins in my back because it wouldn't let me sword fight. And I have done over 4,000 live comedy sword fighting shows all over the world. You are limited by your belief, all told. And if you think about it this way, and I'm going to get very metaphysical and sort of scientific here. Right?
Yeah.
Everything you see in this world is made of atoms. And according to Einstein, atoms is merely an energy event. There's nothing solid there. Right? Now, if you hold your hand up and you look at your hand is made of atoms, and the eyes you're looking at it with are made of atoms, and the air in between is made of atoms. There is nothing there but atoms. Right? Okay? So, what are you?
A whole lot of atoms.
So really, you are just the consciousness within the image, right?
Okay.
Now I got you into the science side of it.
Right.
Now let's shift it over to the metaphysical side of it. You are created in God's image. So think about that for a second.
Right.
Everything you see is the image, including your hand.
Wow.
Your consciousness is one energy source.
Is that one?
Right?
Yeah.
And the only thing that's keeping you separate is your own belief about it. Now, the Apostle John said God is love. And I'm going to do apostle stuff in this one because I like that guy. His name's John. Anyway,
he got a good name. He got a good name.
He got a good name. Got a good name, right? So he says God is love. Well, if God is love, and we are here to experience God, the only way you can experience anything is by knowing the opposite, which is fear. The opposite of love is fear. And people say it's hate. No, it's not. Hate is a product of fear.
Yeah.
Right? And fear is just an emotional reaction to some future event that may or may not happen. So in reality, there is only one thing, but it's our own mental process that keeps us separate from it.
Right.
So in the process of me getting out of that bed, I had to let go of my fear and get into the process. Now, on a different level, Sufism, You ever heard of Sufism? The Sufis?
Never did.
And the world.
No.
You ever heard of the whirling dervishes, the guys who dance and spin in circles for hours and hours and
Oh,
hours and hours?
oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay. Those the whirling dervishes are Sufis.
Okay.
They're Sufisms. Now, in Sufism, they talk about the concept of God being on one side of a veil, and we're on the other side of the veil, and our life is a struggle against the veil.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Well, when you dig deeper in it, they tell you that the veil is fear.
Wow.
Right? So you're fighting with your fears. So now your whole goal in life. So if you want to go back to your original question,
Right.
do I think that there are things that are unlimited? I think everything can be unlimited.
Uh-huh.
It's a matter of how much fear we want to put into the process.
Right.
Fear of failing is a powerful tool to stop you from doing anything. And fear of I don't know anybody who has the fear of achieving. Right. I don't know anybody who's like the fear of being great. I'm so afraid of being great. Right? I don't get that one. The fears are always negative, right?
True. And I've heard it taught before on a negative tone where the fear of success, in a sense, is actually rooted in the fear of failure. Like I'll fail with success. So once again, it's rooted back to failure. It's like they can't handle a level of success. So I'm afraid to be the full potential because I'll fail, but it's always rooted back at that failure.
Right. Most people, if they're quote unquote fearing success, they're fearing that they'll get to success and then fail.
Right. So the root, exactly.
Right.
Yep.
So they're really focused on the failure, of losing it all. Right.
Yes.
And the thing is, your life is a constant change. Now, in leadership, I'll tell you an interesting thing about leadership. In leadership, you have to realize that when you're a leader, you have to lead from their perspective, not yours. So it's very interesting.
Say that again. Say that again, please. Say that again. You have to lead.
To lead someone, you have to lead from their perspective and not yours.
I agree.
You can't lead somewhere from where you want them to be. You have to lead them from where they are, because that's how leading works. Because if you were doing it the other way, you wouldn't be a leader. You'd be a dragger. You'd be dragging them along, right?
And unfortunately, we feel dragged sometimes when a leader is leading in that way, right? So raise your hand. Absolutely. If you're listening to the podcast, raise your hand if you've ever felt dragged. It's because that leader was leading in that way by dragging. And at the same time, raise your hand if you've ever done that unconsciously, right? We've all fun.
And if you're in that experience, isn't it a drag?
It's a drag. It's such a drag.
It's a drag, man.
Love it.
But the thing is, leaders have to lead from where they are, which means the leader has to empathetically understand where they are.
Right. Yeah.
And so the leader has to look at the team and say, "Where are you?" Now, I was helping two banks merge one time, and one bank had a much better system than the other bank, and I had to train the bank with the better system not to expect the other people to know their system. Okay? Because they won't know it. They have no clue about it.
Right.
I said, you have to go back to where you were at that point.
Right.
The thing about leadership that's interesting is you have to not think of leadership as a hierarchy, because that's where everybody falls into this hierarchy. The leader is up above them in the scale. I look at leadership this way: two people leaving on a trip to the same destination, and one person is left 2 hours early. Right. Now, the question you ask yourself at this point is: the person who left 2 hours early better than the person who hasn't left yet? No. They're just further down the road.
They're just further down, right?
Now,
right.
Okay, so the person further down the road, they have another obligation. They need to call back and tell the people coming behind them where the pitfalls, the challenges, and the fastest routes are.
Hey, right.
So that's what a leader does. A leader helps people come along the path that they've already trekked. And the interesting thing is, if you try to sit up there in the future and say, "Just come this way. I don't care how you get here," that's not leading, right? That's not leading. Leading means you meet.
Right.
That's not it.
No, I love that.
The interesting thing is you have to lead from where they are, because that's the only way you can lead.
Thank you so much for touching on that. I think it's sometimes maybe, I don't know how it happens in default or something else, but you think, in a sense, I love that word you meant, like better than. We think sometimes if people are promoted to leadership or they're awarded leadership roles and everything else, then they're better than everyone else. But I love that because it eliminates something I really believe, which is leadership isn't a role. we think leadership is something we get assigned to or something that someone else gives us, like it's outside and we're waiting to get leadership. But the leadership starts from within. And a lot of things you talked on today, it's really that personal responsibility, that accountability on ourselves, leading ourselves first. The greatest leaders can lead themselves first. So thank you for touching on that and kind of eliminating that whole process of leadership isn't better than. That person that left earlier, like you said, they're not better than. They're just further down the road. And then they have a responsibility to look at everyone else coming and saying, hey, not just kind of point finger, but hey, here's the pitfalls, here's things you want to avoid, here's how you can do things better, right? What a way to capture leadership. And that's why I think I love these conversations with you, John. There's so much that we align with and when we have our conversations, but at the same time, there's so much that kind of opens our mind. And I know that happens for me. I hope that happens for you when we have a conversation. But I think it's one thing important with leadership is keeping our mind not so rigid, like you said, flexible, so we can continue to grow. Because when even our minds are rigid, what worked for me yesterday isn't going to work for where it's going to take me, right? There's more to learn. There's more to kind of grow in.
And leaders have to realize they have to continue to grow in their leadership, because you will raise to the level of your own incompetence.
Yeah.
And so if you will raise up until you stop learning anything or you stop building up, and then you're going to start to fall because someone's going to come up who's going to pass you. Right.
Right.
So
right.
It's like the word mastery. People say, I have mastery of this. Well, you don't have mastery if you've stopped.
Right. Right.
Because somebody's going to come up and I practice nunchaku sticks every day, and sometimes a couple hours every day. And the reason I do that is because of the fact that I'm improvising and I'm exploring new things to do with it. I do nunchucks and I do passes with my feet and I do arm slides and all kinds of cool things with nunchucks, right?
Right.
But that's because I continually learn and mastery is about continual growth.
Awesome.
And you need to be taking the things that you're continually learning and growing and creating and adding to the skill set and sharing that so that somebody can pass you someday.
I love it. And thank you for bringing it up. When you talked about the nunchucks, I remember looking at your website and seeing you do a quick teaching on it on the video. And I think it's a perfect time to let everybody know, hey, if you're still listening to this, you definitely getting some great value and you probably want to learn more. And a really good way is to jump on John's website. When I got in there, you get a chance to see a lot of stuff of what he did at live events and how we kind of help people through this process. To kind of focus on something right now. Hey, focus. I want to use one of those principles.
There you go.
I think
I'm fearless. Let's do it.
Let's do it. I want to push the go button. Because one thing we really try to achieve here at Leader Sees is we want some insight, but we also want some action at every podcast. Like, what is something we can do today? If somebody's listening to the podcast and they're like, hey, you know what? I'm listening in. I got the 5S. I love it. I'm going to check out more of John. We're going to see what's going on. But at the same time, what can somebody do today to push that go button to get things moving?
Well, first of all, get a real clear vision of where you want to go.
Okay.
And then take the smallest action towards it. And sometimes the smallest action can easily be, writing it down and then starting to create an outline of how to get there. Or it might be something big and bold, like, I want to lose weight, then skip that ice cream sundae, right? right. That's an action, right?
Uh-huh.
But the thing is, you have to start and you have to take the actions, and the actions have to become congruent. Today's actions are tomorrow's outcomes. And so if you don't take today and put your actions into play, there's no outcome tomorrow. And so you have to make sure that the small present moment successes. Here's the biggest thing that I see most people struggle with in life. They look at those giant goals and they're out there and they're like, and they seem so daunting and looming over top of them, right? Mm-hmm. But they struggle with the concept that they have to get to them.
Right.
That's not the way the brain works. It's not the way the brain works. Because you will never get to it. It's coming to you, depending on your present moment actions. And so you need to make your present small moment actions in alignment with the outcome. And as you do that, that thing comes and surrounds your present moment experience. Because when you experience it, it's going to be in your present moment, in your I am moment, not your I will be moment.
I love it, guys. There we got some really practical steps coming directly from John, someone that trains, that's been training for years already, thousands of people, speaking at big events internationally, throughout the globe, I even say, going out there and helping people really overcome some real life fear. And it's not just kind of picking things out of the pocket. There's a specific process that he has everyone go through, and they get real life results. And like he just gave us here, focus, get a clear outcome. Whatever you're thinking of in your life, get a clear outcome. And when you get that clear outcome, take a present day action step. Like, go ahead and take a present day action step to go ahead and keep things moving forward. I know that'll bless me today by going ahead and looking at that. I know that'll bless a lot of our community here at Leader Seeds Podcast. Anything you'd like to share before we kind of, close this episode, or anything else, just to kind of land something today before we kind of close up?
Well, I want to make sure that your audience gets a free gift from me. And I say a free gift, I mean a free gift. I mean, I'm going to give you a link, and you go there and you download it, and you don't even have to give me your email address. Today's about bringing value to you, not taking from you. So what that is a 5F workbook. It takes you through the process of assessing your fears and moving forward through them. Go there, download it, check it out, and put it into action. Take a small present moment action today to create the outcome that you're looking for. But here's the other thing I'll ask. While you're on my website anyway, look around, take a look, see what you like. I have a daily vlog on there. I put out a daily piece of motivation every day. That's why I'm redundant, man, because I said daily and every day in the same sentence. And and if you're looking for me on YouTube, it's the same stuff that I have on my daily vlog on my website. It's on YouTube as well, Corporate Action Hero. You can find me on YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter and all those places, Corporate Action Hero. And on Twitter, I'm JD Action Hero. But take an action today towards your outcome, and you'll get there. Just a matter of you staying positively focused.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll have all those links in the description, guys. If you're listening in here, if you're watching, I'll throw them on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, but for those that might be listening in the car that want to write it down, could you just give the website that we can go to if they want to write it down really quickly?
Yeah, it's for the main website, it's corporateactionhero.com. And if you want the 5F workbook, it's corporateactionhero.com/gift. Okay. And it won't. If you go to gift, you can get onto the website, but you're not going to get to the gift on the website directly. So I would go to the gift page and then go around the rest of the site.
Absolutely, and it's a free gift. Look at that, guys! Free gift. You don't even have to leave your email. What a man that just kind of just pouring out value. Thank you for your heart in that. Not just having somebody with a heart, but having great experience in helping people get real life results. We can have some people have some good conversations on topics and kind of, like I said, give us goosebumps. But you definitely help people kind of grind the gears and get through and push that go button, in life. So thank you guys. Thank you for doing that, John, in today's episode. Guys, go ahead. I highly encourage you. Go ahead and grab that workbook that he's giving out for free. That way we don't just take it and we can kind of have today's podcast tickle our ear. We can really go ahead and put some action into it. We can really overcome fear. And think about this, guys. Think about this if you're listening in. Think about what would happen in your life if you could put these 5Fs in your life and eliminate fear. What could happen in the next 3 months? I know for John, in 3 months, he was standing up when doctors told him he couldn't. In 3 months, he was standing up when doctors said he couldn't. In a year and 6 months, he was breaking barriers. He was setting new records. And look what he's doing today and how many people he's reaching with the message that he has. What could happen for you? Go ahead and get that workbook, guys, at the website. Once again, corporateactionhero.com/gift. Right.
And I'd like to say one more thing. Go out there, be an action hero, not a reaction zero.
Write that down, guys. Be an action hero, not a reaction zero. I'm writing it down right now because I love that. A final question. Because what we like to do here is we like to grow in Leader Seeds community, and I like to kind of do that on my personal journey here, with podcasting. And coming in today, I had a certain level that I want to deliver here to provide a great environment for you, our guests here, in Leader Seeds. And I just want to say, how was your experience here with Leader Seeds? How was everything as you spent some time with us today, John?
Oh, it was wonderful. It's great having a conversation with somebody who understands the principles and is open enough to listen to something new. A lot of leaders get stuck in their own dogma, their own ceremonies and things that they've created around leadership. And real leaders listen to all leadership styles and learn from all of them. And so I think it's great that you've created a platform here on your podcast to do that and let other people hear other points of view about leadership.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. With that being said, guys, let's go ahead and put into action what we learned with John today. For today's episode, we'll be signing off today. Thanks, guys. Thanks, John.
See ya.